Hey everyone, welcome back to BDG Reviews. Um, this is episode 2 of My Theory. I mentioned in the last episode about Nightmare on Elm Street. Here's Nightmare on Elm Street. So I'm going to talk about, in case you didn't watch the first video, this is what this series is. Essentially, I'm taking a movie, thinking about either a prequel or like a remake of it or whatever that didn't really work how I would do it. Someone's waved a magic wand. I've been given full creative control over this movie. How would I do it? And I've given myself rules. The rules are there's certain things you can't change. So, I'll I used Nightmare on Elm Street for the last one as an example. I'll use Friday the 13th. Okay, you have to have Jason Voorhees. His backstory is what it is. He drowned as a kid, comes back, he's killing people at the camp. It has to be set at the camp. So you have ground rules for how this works. So I'm talking Nightmare on Elm Street, as you've just read the thing. A lot of this comes from my thoughts on the Nightmare on Elm Street remake, which I actually really like. I'm actually quite a big fan of the remake. Was it perfect? Not by a long shot. Was it a great movie? Not by a long shot. But I had fun with it. I thought there was a lot of stuff done right in it. So I'm going to take on the role of I am creating a Nightmare on Elm Street remake. And how would I go about it, and what I would do differently and everything. So first up, the ground rules. What am I keeping 100%? Freddy Krueger is a killer. He is burned. He kills in dreams. He's got the claw. He's got everything. That's set in stone. And, he was killed by the parents of Elm Street. So, now we get into the story itself. My story for it would follow more along the lines of the remake, honestly. And here's the first major kind of change in it, in that I'm going to run with something that they should have run with, but they kind of chickened out. Freddy Krueger was not guilty. Now, I'm not saying Freddy Krueger was innocent. There's a difference between innocent and not guilty. There were murders going on of kids. The parents of Elm Street were out looking for who did this. While they were out, they saw Freddy. He was taking pictures of kids. They were rightly concerned. They followed him back to where he works at the boiler room. They look in. There are pictures of kids. There's all these articles up on the wall of these murders. They see him working on bladed weapons. So they're like, you know what? This is the guy. They start chucking in the Molotovs. They burn him to death. But here's the problem. He wasn't the killer. There's another killer. They're picked up, a day later by, the police. They find out who did it, and they arrest him, send him to jail, everything. Freddy wasn't guilty, but he wasn't innocent. All of the taking the pictures, all of the papers up on the thing. He was planning something. You know, whether this guy got caught or not, within 6 months, he would have been killing kids. But what you get now is you get something that I call like the cosmic loophole, wherein that like this guy wasn't guilty, but he wasn't innocent. But as a result of him dying and being brutally murdered for nothing, essentially, like the movie The Crow, he's given kind of the option. It's like, you know what? You want to go back and avenge yourself? And he's like, you know, hell yeah. But when he gets back, you know, he exists in dreams. He can do whatever he wants. He's no longer bound by the physical reality. But he starts off, you know, literally, he'd just be scaring the living crap out of people in their dreams and just eating it up. But he quickly realizes he can go further. Part of him also knows, though, it's like he's been given the chance to exact revenge on the people that killed him. So he realizes if he gets revenge on all these people that killed him, maybe this power is going to go. So he doesn't target them. He targets their kids like he was going to in life. He could take out the parents just as easy, if not easier. But he doesn't, because he knows that if he does, it's going to end up being his end. So that's kind of the backstory part of it. Now, in the real world, like, you know, you're going to follow kind of the same plot as the movie, as the remake, you know. One difference is you're going to have better actors, because the actors in the remake were quite bad, honestly. Except for Jackie Earle Haley. I'm just saying, I'm fine with Jackie Earle Haley as Freddy Krueger. I think it works. In the real world, essentially, it follows the same plot. You get the kids, they're having the dreams, they're dying brutally. They start figuring it out. It's like, our parents killed this guy. He wasn't doing this. Like, this is like literally sins of the father, you know, reflected on the son. So you have these kids now turning against their parents. So as opposed to like in like, you know, the things, it's like oh, you know, like we were caring for you, blah blah blah. It's like these kids are having none of it. It's like, you know, we are dying because of something you did. You know, we're not, we don't dig this, you know, we're not happy about this. So I would have a lot of, I don't know whether teen angst is the right word, but you would have a lot of conflict between the parents and the kids, because Freddy would make it known. He'd be like, you know, like why are you doing this? Like, ask your parents. And, you know, he'd be playing with them that way, you know. He'd be sowing these seeds of discontent as well as taking them out. So he'd start off like slow. He'd be like, you know, just like scaring them, scratching them a bit. Again, why are you doing this? Like, ask your father. And, you know, in the meantime, you would also have the whole idea of how can I put this? I'm trying to think of the right way to word this. You would have like kind of the Dream Warriors thing where, the idea is like, when all's said and done, yeah, he's got these powers, he can kill in dreams, but it is still a dream. And if you're strong enough mentally, you can send him to the void. There's like a place where he won't go because there's like nothing there. And essentially, like, if someone is strong enough in their willpower and in their thought process, they can force him out of the dream world into this other place that's essentially a void where he still has all his powers and everything, but it's like, what does it matter? There's no one there. So that would be kind of the overarching plot. These kids trying to figure out how do we get him there? And how do we get him there without involving the parents? Because the parents are the ones that started everything. And then, obviously you could then end it with him going there and then go into like a sequel. Like, I mean, I know, was it Guillermo del Toro? Someone had an idea for a sequel where essentially, kind of like that, Freddy was like basically powerless. Kids would, go into dreams just for the sheer, like, pleasure of beating the living crap out of this guy. You'd have, like, nothing. So, you have it like this. You have, like, this void, but you have people, like, in a sequel for this, you would have people entering this void to kick the living crap out of him. And he's been, he has his powers there, but they're waning because, no one's afraid of him anymore. And then, obviously, he kills one. He manages to do it, and his power starts coming back, and he can fight his way out of this void and back into the dream world. So yeah, that's my idea for a Nightmare on Elm Street remake. I'm a big fan of, how can I put this? I'm a fan of, like, crossing mythologies when you can. And that's something that always got me, the whole idea, like, watching The Crow, and, the idea of, like, this guy's been, like, unjustly killed, he gets to come back and avenge his death. Like, what if that was why Freddy comes back? It just kind of makes sense, and I love the idea of, like, the cosmic loophole. The idea of, like, you've been punished for something that you didn't actually do, but it was you were going to do something maybe worse. But because of that cosmic loophole, you get put into this category. Essentially, think of it like this. It would be like if someone killed Hitler before he rose to power. He would maybe be welcomed into heaven or whatever because he hadn't done anything. But everything was still there. That evil was still there and it was still building, So the idea of, you've essentially, like, if you'd waited and he actually had done something and then you killed him, karma would have they'd have just taken him. He'd have been just gone. But because, you jumped the gun, because you took justice into your own hands when there wasn't enough evidence and everything, like, there's a reason there wasn't enough evidence for this particular thing. It's an interesting plot device. I've said before, when it comes to plot devices, there's certain things I like. I like the idea of, you know, the cosmic plot hole. I like the idea of evil versus evil, which is something I'll be bringing up in another one of these, like some other times, you know. I like the idea of this thing that you're doing that's harmful is actually protecting you from something worse. That's something else I'll probably be bringing up in a later episode as well. But yeah, that's my thoughts on A Nightmare on Elm Street, on like a remake. Let us know below what you think. Whether you agree, disagree, it's all good. You know, what you would do in that same situation if you were given the power to make the movie, not to come back and kill people in their dreams. You don't do that shit. But yeah, that's it for me. See you next time.